is he fighting? I thought they was just doing introductions. What is going on? Alright, let me see.
Hey, Jay!
Yeah.
Never mind.
Alright. What? What? How? Who is this man? Who is this?
I've had it! When will you learn that your actions have consequences? Ah!
Let's try a quick exercise.
Damn it! What are you two doing? Nani wo shittendayo!
Of these two versions of the same moment, which one was better? Can you tell me why? Those questions, which is superior and why, make up the foundation of the endless debate that has come to be known as sub versus dub. Sub refers to anime that retains the original Japanese audio while layering English subtitles over the episode's visuals. Dub refers to the process of localizing the anime by stripping out the original Japanese audio and replacing it with the lines re-recorded by an English voice cast. The original question, which is better and why, has been part of the anime community for as long as anime has been popular. No matter what fandom you're part of, you've probably had this argument with someone at some point in time. It seems like an inescapable argument at this point. Elitists in the anime world swear that if you don't watch absolutely everything in Japanese, you're a filthy casual, and on the opposite end, a lot of casuals will call you a weeb for watching the exact same show as them, but in a different language. For the most part, it feels like anime fans on both ends of the spectrum have abandoned the idea of there being a comfortable middle ground in relation to sub versus dub. But why is that? Why are people so damn stubborn when it comes to their stances in the anime community? Well, as someone who has watched plenty of anime both subbed and dubbed, I'll try my best to validate the selling points of both versions while also illuminating any potential downsides. Let's start with the subbed episodes, since that's where I land the most often these days. I should preface this by saying these are my own opinions and you're totally free to agree or disagree in the comments so long as you're not a douchebag about it. What is the biggest merit of watching something subbed? Back in the day, the biggest draw for Western audiences was seeing it well before its localization, but with the rise of successful streaming platforms and the massive audience anime has garnered in Western markets over the past 2 decades, more and more companies are slowly but surely implementing dual language simulcasting. We're starting to see anime premiere in Japanese and English on the same day, which is something no one would have considered possible even earlier this decade. With dual simulcasting out of the way, I think the race comes down to the difference in quality of the Japanese voice cast versus the English voice cast. Now, that's not to say that English voice actors are inherently worse, that would be disingenuous to say. There's just something more natural about the performances in their native language. There's more nuance to it that doesn't feel forced or in many cases, goofy. For example, the clip I showed at the beginning of Deku. The English voice actor does a solid job, but there's something about the Japanese voice actor that really sells the frustration of the character. I think that's a good way to sum it up. The Japanese cast sell the dialogue in a far more natural way than the English cast. Direction plays a big part in whether or not an English dub works well or falls short too. The way an actor delivers a line, the tone in their voice, even the changes to the script itself determine if something plays out well. A character's entire personality in the eyes of the audience lives and dies on the performance of the chosen voice actor, so it's important to get it right as often as possible. A good example of what I mean is Tanjiro from Demon Slayer. I watched it all the way through in Japanese when it was first airing, and then in preparation for this video, trudged through its English dub. The dub isn't bad per se, it just feels, I don't know, off. Despite going through the same story, both iterations of Tanjiro feel like different people. But honestly, part of that can be attributed to how we perceive the character to be in a language we don't understand as foreigners. After adopting a certain understanding of a character in one language, it's not unusual for that to clash with the character we perceive when we hear the same dialogue in our native tongue. For me, it really does come down to the natural sense of energy the Japanese cast puts into each line. How about some downsides though? That's easy. The biggest drawback about watching subbed anime is exactly that, the subtitles. Unfortunately, while the performances do feel better, it demands your complete and undivided attention unless you're fluent in the language. It can sometimes be a blink and you'll miss it kind of thing for large chunks of exposition, but that also depends on who subtitled the anime to begin with. I know I found myself having to decide between playing a game on my first monitor while watching YouTube on my second, or if I wanted to only watch an anime. It wouldn't be possible to do both in my case without missing key dialogue or neglecting my game to the point I should just turn it off. That kind of undivided attention need for subbed anime can turn a lot of people off, especially if they like to multitask with multiple monitors. There's also the possibility that someone could really like an anime, but not be the best or fastest reader for any number of understandable reasons, so fast subtitles would kind of gate them out of an otherwise enjoyable experience. Shifting gears to the English dub, let's start with the positives. Like I literally just mentioned, Multitasking while watching it is much more doable since you wouldn't need to be speed reading for the entirety of the duration of an episode. A lot of anime fans in the West came onto the scene thanks to things like Toonami and Adult Swim's Anime Block, so most people are familiar with certain voice actors, and there is a kind of simple joy to recognizing someone's voice in a different show. While they don't always bring the same organic energy, English casts do bring their own charm to projects and can even become the default experience of a beloved show if all the right pieces are in the right places. In terms of spreading awareness of the art form that is anime, it is much easier to bring in a new fan when shown something in English. There's something about subtitles that cause potential fans to groan and want to do anything else. A lot of people I've met over the years, myself included, started out as people who watched anime dubbed and then made the transition to subs. The barrier for entry is much lower when you can actually understand what the characters are saying. It's like if someone invited you to a party, but when you got to the door, they asked you to solve an algebra problem before you could go in and enjoy yourself. No one told you there'd be math, and you're suddenly much less interested. I think that's how prospective fans feel about the endless text they'd have to read with subbed episodes. What are the downsides of the English dub though? Sometimes the performances and delivery can feel stilted and uninspired, and they're frequently subpar when compared directly to their Eastern counterparts, though that may just be due to the difference in how our languages are spoken. While English dubs allow for more flexibility for English speakers to do other things, that same flexibility can invite distraction. When you're casually watching something, how often do you open other tabs or look at stuff on your phone? Understanding the language frees up your eyes from having to focus solely on what you're watching. That may be a slight nitpick, but it's something I experienced personally and figured I'd toss in. Context can also make a massive difference. There are some cultural jokes specific to Japan that just don't translate well into English, so to compensate, alternate dialogue is used to replace those lines, which can feel very out of place. Or worse, they'll still try to stick the landing with the joke and just ruin it entirely. Then there's one of the funniest cases I've seen in recent history where translating something into English just sounds incredibly bad out of context, especially given the political climate in America over the past 10 years.
This is for everyone you've killed! England, murderer! Hold your fire! This man isn't black! What?
Someone had to have looked at that, or heard it in the studio and thought, wait, what? There are also typically differences in translations between versions that can change the tone or delivery of a line. Take this moment from episode 76 of My Hero Academia. You can skip to this time code to avoid spoilers. There's a strange disconnect between the lines, delivery, and visuals of the English dub when compared to the intensity of the Japanese sub. In the dub, Deku's semi-shouting, mildly inconvenienced tone clash bitterly with the savagery, desperation, and legitimate anger of the stunning visuals. If we look at the dialogue itself, the difference stands out even more. In the sub, Deku says, "If I can't save the one small girl in front of me, how can I become a hero who saves everyone?" This line is a summation of the frustration Deku has felt throughout the entirety of this particular arc. It comes as a direct result of the powerlessness he felt when he was unable to do the one thing a hero should do: save someone. There's an underlying layer of subtext that conveys to the audience that Deku's idea of what makes a worthy hero is someone who is able to save anyone and everyone, a template stemming from the example set by All Might. There's so much to glean from this one line that it's actually kind of ridiculous. In the dub, however, Deku says, "If I can't save Eri, then how can I call myself a hero who saves everybody? That's who I'm gonna be." This line, while appearing fundamentally the same, kind of changes the tone of what Deku's saying in a weird way. Like how he specifically says if he can't save Eri, which places her on something of a pedestal. It unconsciously cheapens the frustration Deku felt up to this point by shining a spotlight specifically on this one child that was being held under extraordinary circumstances by a powerful enemy. The framework of the statement makes it seem as though if he can't save Eri specifically, he'll never be worthy of the title of hero. What makes this more bewildering is that we've already had examples of heroes failing in the series. It's not a matter of ambition, it's a simple reality that heroes fail too. The charm of the Japanese line is that Deku says, "If I can't save the one small girl in front of me," which serves as a blank canvas for anyone in need, mirroring Deku's desire to help in any way he can for anyone he can. In the dub, the line makes Deku seem like he just wants to be the hero, which comes across as somewhat self-serving. In a strange way, it removes complexity from the character. The second line is also super goofy. Oh, Jesus Christ. But hey, that's just me. With both sides of the coin discussed, where does that bring us? I think anime fans on both sides need to realize that there is a comfortable middle ground where both versions of an anime can thrive. It's possible to enjoy one show in Japanese and another show in English. That's where I find myself, typically when it comes to more classic anime versus newer stuff. There are many English iterations of anime that, in my opinion, completely outshine their Japanese counterparts, and it's perfectly fine to ride the fence based solely on what works for you. Even though I watch basically everything subbed now, there are things I just can't watch in Japanese, like Full Metal Alchemist, Yu Yu Hakusho, and Cowboy Bebop. There are shows where I started off in one camp, but flipped to the other, like I started watching Dragon Ball Super in English, because I grew up with the English voice cast, but ended up enjoying it more in Japanese. Or I started rewatching Trigun in Japanese, but preferred the dub and went back. Hell, there are also shows that I can watch in both languages and be perfectly happy either way, like Mob Psycho 100, Death Note, Fooly Cooly, or Detective Conan. The point is that it all boils down to how you feel at any given time, what you do or don't enjoy, and so on. If you're someone that only watches anime in English, I would genuinely recommend watching your favorite show in Japanese to see what differences you do or don't like. Maybe some emotional moments will hit harder based on the performance, or maybe you'll go cross-eyed from all the subtitles. Who knows? Just give it a try sometime. If you're someone that only watches subbed anime, that's perfectly alright too. What isn't alright is belittling others for not consuming anime in the same fashion as you, or viewing them as lesser simply because they aren't as hardcore about it. Keep in mind that anime blowing up in the West the way it has is still a relatively recent thing, all things considered. Having new people getting into the culture is good for the industry overall, so take it easy on the dub fans, alright? More people becoming fans in any language means more merch sold, higher ratings, and in turn, more anime. It's a win-win for all of us. In conclusion, do what feels right for you, you know? My friends were watching Hunter x Hunter dubbed, and while I was dying inside the entire time, I was happy to see them enjoying a story that I also became somewhat fond of. It opened the door for me to introduce them to new stuff, and that's what this community should be all about at the end of the day. Be a fan, not a gatekeeper.